Hello everyone, how are you all doing? Today, you will not only learn ABCD but you will learn from A to Z. We are going to study about the GST Compensation Cess. Why was the GST Compensation Cess introduced? Right? And we will also study that how is the GST Compensation Cess being levied. We will see this. Till when the GST Compensation Cess will continue? At what rate is GST Compensation Cess is levied? On which products GST Compensation Cess is levied? Let's study this. Let me take you to the background of it. Furthermore, this tells us that when the central government wanted to introduce GST in the country, the state governments were not in support. They were opposing this. You know why? The first thing is that the government wanted to bring in the national GST. That when national GST will be implemented, entire revenue would go to the central government. The GST will be part of the union list. But how could state governments be prepared? State governments were losing revenue due to the introduction of GST. GST has subsumed, or you can say, it has merged four major taxes. I am talking about the four major taxes. That includes excise duty, service tax, VAT and CST. Excise, service tax were with central government, but VAT, CST revenues were with state governments. The state government would have to give up their revenue from VAT and CST if GST were to be implemented. State government said we don't want GST in the country. Central government said how can they not want it? What will we do about GST? We will bring dual GST. Central government changed the stance and said we'll bring dual GST. Whatever money comes from GST you keep half while we keep other half. Say, should we bring it now? So the state government thought should we bring it or not and said no, we shouldn't bring it. Central said why? We are giving half money, why shouldn't it be brought? State government replied currently whatever money we are receiving from CST, VAT, let's say 100 rupees. You imposed GST and gave us half money. Let's say GST gives 150 rupees. You will give us how much? Half, 75 rupees. Therefore we would be at a loss because of it. Money we are getting today from VAT and CST, or revenue that is foregoing, in exchange for which GST is coming. If earnings will be less than the existing revenue, what will we do? No, let it continue as it is. We don't need GST or anything like it. Did I tell you the biggest weakness of our country? You know it? No one likes change. Good or bad is secondary. There should not be any change. Dialogue from movie Mohabbatein, the one that Amitabh Bachchan said, I don't like change. This is ingrained in blood of Indians that they don't like any kind of change. State government said things will be as it is, what if it's revenue shortage? They are not thinking of increase, what if it's reduced? Central government said we will guarantee this too. If it falls short, central government will compensate. Right, and how much is the guarantee? Listen. Government said based on 14% your revenue increases every year. They gave guarantee on it. Central government said your revenue is 100 rupees. Next year your revenue should be 114 rupees. 14% increase every year. So, now your revenue in old regime is 100. We believe next year your revenue will be 114. If you didn't receive 114 from GST, then we will give you remaining amount. 114 is guaranteed. If you get 112 from GST, then we will give 2 rupees. Government said promise is made. All state governments will be compensated if they receive less revenue than old regime with 14% growth rate. Right. State governments were asked, now tell us, will GST be implemented? Further, the state governments thought, well, this is a good deal that we are getting. Therefore, it's an amazing deal. It's a bumper offer. Because if you calculate the average of the revenue growth of all the state governments, then when the time the GST came in, you know what was the state revenue growth rate? Can you tell me? It was around 12%. That two average, some were less than while others about 12%. It was 12% average growth rate for revenue. Now, Modi ji thrown challenge right away. Average growth rate was 12%, 14% was promised to state governments. State government says this much is below our actual growth, which is guaranteed with GST. And before this, government excluded many items from scope of GST on which state governments got huge revenue. For example, alcohol was excluded, no GST on that. Old tax will be applied on it. All petrol related products were removed. They left out many things. Ones that were big revenue generators, and for the rest, they gave guarantee, 14% growth. So now state government accepts and says bring GST. Central government said, how will this compensation be given to the state government if revenue falls? So let's do one thing, this is done for 5 years, only for 5 years. We impose tax which will be GST Compensation Cess. It won't be on everything. We will apply it to goods which are super luxury goods, sin goods. GST on that is very high, it is 28% GST on it. But government said we will impose GST Compensation Cess on it, but this will be for 5 years. Okay, because the guarantee that was given was for 5 years. When was GST introduced? 1st July 2017. From there, take 5 years, 30th June 2022. 5 years from 1st July 2017 is 30th June 2022. So this 5-year guarantee was given. And they said that like this, we will continue to compensate you. Okay? Okay, good. Furthermore, now another question arises, what if money is saved? 5 years later, there was balance remaining in GST Compensation Cess, amount used to compensate given by central government. If money is left, what will we do? Central government said remaining GST compensation after 5 years on June 30th, 2022. That will be distributed among central and all state governments. How will it be done? Remaining half money will be with central government. Other half money will be distributed among all state governments. So the ratio was also decided that in the last year, state government's revenue will be distributed in the same ratio. This is about remaining money from GST Compensation Cess. So planning was done, all things were written in Act and GST Compensation Act was created. Done. This was the Act. Only this much. But it turned out completely opposite to all of this. No one thought about it. First thing is that central government was assuming money would not decrease, that's why central government was giving great deal of guarantee. Money won't be less. They will get enough money from GST. The second thing, money that will come from GST Compensation Cess. Even if it's less than that, there will be compensation. Even after compensation, money will be left. And no one thought that revenue of state governments would be less due to GST. And the money we are collecting for compensation, the GST Compensation Cess, even that will fall short. No one thought about it. So did that happen? Yes, children. Revenue of state governments decreased compared to what was promised. The GST Compensation Cess that was collected, even that couldn't cover the compensation. Central government had to take a loan to fulfill that promise of compensation. When was GST compensation levied until? 30th June 2022. But to cover the compensation, the central government had to take a loan. Now central government said we will increase GST Compensation Cess. Okay, so that we can have more money from GST Compensation Cess, which will help us repay the loan. Loan that we took to compensate state governments, we can repay that loan. Okay, so when we discuss so many things, there is a fear and confusion in students' minds. Did GST failed in our country? Why did this happen? Let me tell you, GST came into effect in 2017, COVID came in 2020 in our country. Entire country was shut. Our country was under lockdown for years. At that time, GST collection was stopped. It was because of this. This is the reason. Central government had given a guarantee based on a 14% growth rate. Guarantee was not fulfilled for this reason. GST collection wasn't much. Where will compensation cess collection come? Goods were not selling. Now you must have got the gist of it, that all the struggle was because of COVID. Because of this COVID, even today, government is taking GST compensation cess to repay the loan taken to fulfill the promise. I will tell you one thing. This is my personal opinion, okay? This has nothing to do with studies. And no one should be offended by this, okay? This is only my personal opinion, my own opinion. Furthermore, I have noticed this in my life that whenever the government imposes a tax and says we will remove it in 2 to 4 years, it hasn't been removed. It remains till today. For example, as they say, once a lion tastes blood, he will never drink water. Exactly same thing happens. Tax is like blood. Once government tasted blood, it won't let it go. And this is just an excuse or say tactics. They must repay the loan, so government is taking it. If no repayment, it still wouldn't be removed. I'm telling you, it's guaranteed they won't remove it. Its name would have changed or something else, the thing on which government is collecting tax. You know what is the rate of GST compensation cess? Government is collecting more than GST rate. 40%, 60%. They are collecting so much through cess. Does government ever stop that revenue? Never. That's fine. Government says that we need to cover loan. But this extended period will also pass and this tax won't stop. It's personal opinion, please don't get offended by this opinion because a long time ago, let me tell you about this. In income tax that you read about health and education cess, it came around 1992 or it may be around 93. Okay. Don't focus too much on dates. It may have arrived in 1991 or 94. Okay. Focus on context. Now, around 1990, it came under education cess. At that time, it wasn't called health education cess. It was education cess. This was 1%. The government said that our country's education system is very bad. It was mentioned in the budget that we want it at a rate of 1%, this education cess. And education cess will be 1% of your tax, not 1% of income. 1% of the tax that comes on your income means you have to pay tax 1% more. You have to give 1% of the tax. If the citizens of our country are willing to contribute this much to government, then it will improve the education system of our country. People did warm welcome of education cess. They said that the government is thinking of something good. If our tax is 100 rupees, we have to pay 101 rupees. Okay, we will give. 2 years passed and the rate has gone from 1 to 2%. But that was supposed to end, right? But it's 2 now. It worked for 3 years. Government said for basic education in India, we have to take education cess. Our country's higher education is also not good. We want 2% education cess should continue. We will add 1% for secondary higher education cess. First, EC was active, then after few years, HSEC came. How did it come in the first place? Initially, it was 1%. It would last 2 years. It would end. It continued after 2 years. Rate became 2% instead of 1% after 2 years. It continued for 2% few years. Government said we need 1% more secondary higher education cess. Higher education's in bad state, will fix it. It continued for 3%, 3%, 3%. Then it became health and education cess. When will it end? And the system in our country, it will never be right. But okay, whatever. The thing is that once the government starts a tax, whatever tax the government had started, it never ends. They have never ended. It keeps adding, some or other taxes keeps adding. Okay, moving ahead. NC GST Compensation to States Act 2017. The Goods and Services Tax Compensation to States Act 2017 provides for a mechanism to compensate the states on account of loss of revenue, which may arise due to implementation of the GST. This provides for mechanism to compensate states. The states will be compensated. Compensation of what kind of things? On account of loss of revenue. Revenue loss because of the implementation of GST. Read together with Constitution of 101st Amendment Act 2016 for period of 5 years. And this will be for 5 years. Okay, I will write it for you. 5 years, what does that mean? GST compensation cess. It was on 1st July 2017. From here, it said that GST compensation would continue. That means it will continue till 36/2022. Okay. When this was about to end in 36/2022, government said no. This will be extended, so it was extended and now it's March 31st, 2026. Okay, clear? 22/4/26, 3 months less in 4 years. So it means this was extended for 3¼ years. Why was this extended? I told you the whole story. Furthermore, the central government to pay compensation took loan of rupee. They took a loan of 2.69 lakh crore rupees. Okay, the central government took a loan of 2.69 lakh crore rupees to pay for this compensation. The basic reason for this was COVID. Government extended GST compensation cess. They won't give compensation to states in this period. GST Compensation Cess is extended. Central government will collect tax from it. This money, they will pay back the loan. I hope this point is clear. Now, after this, whatever is left, then the money will be distributed according to the original promise. It means central government will get half money, other half will be with state governments. Okay. Was there any money left at that time? If there had been any money left, that would have been end of matter. Central government fell into debt to provide compensation. So this loan has been extended to repay it completely. Now if till 2026, after paying the compensation, taxes and the loan, the remaining money will be distributed. Okay? It was for 5 years. It's extended till 31st March 2026. Act provides that the base year during the transition period shall be reckoned as the financial year 15-16. And a base year was fixed for 14% growth. That is, we will assume 14% growth every year. Okay? That revenue of 15-16, that year's revenue was considered the base revenue. Okay? What does it mean? Such as 2015-16. The state is revenue. Let's say it's 100 rupees. Okay. What will be revenue for 16-17? Revenue for 16-17 will be 114. And what should be the revenue be for 17-18? 100. So 101 plus 14 upon 100 to the power 2. If you apply compound interest, it will grow at 14%. How much should be revenue for 18-19? 101 plus 14 upon 100 to the power 3. What about 114? How did it come? This was 101 plus 14 upon 100. Okay, how much is this? 100 into 114 upon 100. So this will be 114, okay? To the power 1. Understood? How much should be revenue for 1920? It's 100 into 1 plus 14 upon 100 to the power 4. This should be the revenue. Let's calculate. How much will be revenue for 1920? For that state, for 1920. 114 divided by 100 equals to into equals to 234. This will be 100 into 1.688, okay? 9. And 168.89. Revenue of that state whose revenue was 100 in 15-16. It should be 168.89 rupees in 1920. Suppose revenue of this state is 160 rupees. It should come 160 from GST. Central government had to give them 8.89. Now you understand how the calculation took place. You have to tell us the revenue of 15-16. We'll increase it by 14% every year. Okay? When did GST came into effect? It came on 1st of July 2017. GST introduced in same financial year. Furthermore, revenue for this year, which was 100 rupees in 15-16, its revenue should be this. And this was 12 months. GST came on 1st July 2017. It will be 9 months into 9 by 12. Okay, and it will be compared. 9 by 12, then we will compare with actual GST and then we will see the difference, then we will pay. Okay. You don't do these calculations. Understand the GST compensation cess theoretically. Right, so I'm explaining the calculation to you, how the government planned the calculation. Point B, that revenue proposed to be compensated would consist of revenues from all the taxes. Stands subsumed in GST law as audited by CAG. And how will we compare the revenue? It will be compared with the taxes that GST removed. We will see revenue from those taxes. Revenue in 15-16 of state government, which revenue? Total revenue? No. Okay, that revenue here state government has been told about. The revenue that you are losing. All the revenues will be added. For places where GST has come, tell me the total revenue of 15-16. We will see growth based on 14%. For reckoning growth rate of revenue subsumed for state at rate of 14% per annum. Further, levy of a cess over and above the GST and named as the GST Compensation Cess on certain notified goods to compensate states on account of revenue loss suffered by them. Notified goods are, and the GST Compensation Cess would be levied on notified goods. What are those notified goods? Luxury and sin goods. Keep it this way. Pan masala. Pan masala comes under sin goods. Then aerated water. What is aerated water? Pepsi, Coca-Cola, all the cold drinks or say soft drinks are aerated water. This is luxury. Moreover, our country is a country where people drink lots of aam panna. Pepsi, Coca-Cola are not consumed much in India. This is luxury. Okay, who pays 20 rupees, 40 rupees, 50 rupees for water? Okay. So Pepsi, Coca-Cola is a luxury goods. It's subject to 28% GST plus there is GST compensation cess on it also. Okay. Do you know what is GST compensation cess on pan masala 60%? The pan masala gutka you eat. No, not you. Around 60% GST compensation cess is levied on it. Let me tell you. Now if you have 100 rupees of pan masala, 100 rupees before taxes, so GST will be levied on it first. Rate is 28%. On that 28 rupees of GST will be levied. Plus GST compensation cess is levied on it. Its rate is 60%. This 28%, this is also levied on this. And this cess also applies to this. After adding tax, it doesn't apply. GST has respect that they don't apply tax on tax. 60% of 100 rupees will be 60 rupees. Therefore, this will be 188 rupees. Try to understand this. If you are buying pan masala, the government takes half of what you pay for it. Hence, half is only going to manufacturer, distributor, others. Is this point clear? Wholesaler, retailer, all of them make their money from that half. For example, if you buy a pack of tobacco for 2 rupees, then the Indian government takes 1 rupee. Okay? And from that, half will be given to state government. And the remaining 1 rupee is the margin for everyone. Best business is the one that government does. Okay. In 1 rupee for the tobacco, I mean that 1 rupee is the cost of pan masala. In that 1 rupee, all are included manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, distributors, government takes other 1 rupee. Okay, is this clear? Right guys? You can see how much revenue comes from compensation cess on tobacco products, cigarette, cigar, hookah. On motor vehicles. Motor vehicles also have high GST compensation cess. It depends whether it's expensive or cheap. Clear guys? More the cars becomes expensive, rate of GST compensation also increases accordingly. Cars rate is generally 28% GST. Compensation cess depends on the car's price. The more expensive, the higher the compensation cess. Let me give you an idea. If your car is of 25 lakh rupees, car's cost is 25 lakhs. So in this case, you can understand that the tax is around 7 to 8 lakh rupees. It's not a joke. A 25 lakh rupees car has 7 lakh rupees tax. Yes. 25 lakh rupees car has tax of around 7 lakh rupees. When you will read about the rate, it will be clear. You have to pay this much tax to government. Car costing 25 lakhs has tax of 7 lakhs. Its actual cost is 18 lakhs. Coal and lignite. All these comes under GST compensation cess. That the proceeds of the cess will be utilized to compensate states that warrant payment of compensation. That 50% of amount remaining unutilized, amount that is remaining. Okay guys? That didn't happen. Pay attention. That didn't happen. Now when will it be seen? After loan is paid on 23rd March 2026. 50% of amount remaining unutilized in fund at end of transition period will be transferred to center, and the balance 50% will be distributed among states and union territories in the ratio of the total revenue from SGST or UTGST of last year of transition period. Okay guys, so last, which will be the final year. Okay, the final year, revenue for that year of state governments, of all the state governments of the GST will be distributed in the same ratio. Did you understand? Half of the remaining money will go to central government, other half to state governments. Ratio of revenue will be allocated in same ratio to all the states. GST compensation cess under Section 8 of Act is levied on all intrastate, interstate supplies of goods, services of both. Including import of goods, whether it's intrastate or interstate or import, GST compensation cess is levied on all. The cess would not be leviable on supplies made by a person who has opted for composition levy. Therefore, cess would not be leviable on supplies made by a person who has opted for composition levy. What is composition levy? All the tax systems in India, in that very small traders are removed from this system. It's not under your capacity. And among those who are slightly bigger than them, they are given a very simple system. It's given to them in simple manner. So you guys just do this much, that's it, compliance. Just like income tax, if you have studied it, then you would have seen section 44 ADAE are all presumptive taxation. No need to maintain accounts. We will assume this percentage of turnover as income, that's it. In every law, the same thing happens that. One is the part where people are told that they are out of the league, right? While second part is for those who say just do this much, it's complied. Compliance is made very easy. In GST, this category has been created, that is called the composition levy. 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 40 lakhs, if someone's turnover matches these three limits, they are not under GST. Then comes the composition levy. What is composition levy? So if this limit is around 1.5 crores, for some states it's 75 lakhs. If your turnover is up to 1.5 crores, just do this, the work is done. You don't need to register GST. And they don't need to collect or pay, and what else? Just give 1% of your turnover. Something like this. You have to pay certain percentage of your turnover and nothing, no record. You don't have to collect any GST, don't have to pay. Don't put GST on goods. Give 1% of turnover. Such merchants under the composition scheme who are given facilities in GST, they don't have to collect GST compensation cess. Don't have to pay. Now you will say that if you wish to buy a new car, you will find this dealer who sells car, won't his turnover be 1.5 crores? A car costs 25 to 30 lakhs. And this won't happen if car costs 15 lakhs. Second thing. Furthermore, now you will say that you can buy cigarettes from shopkeepers who are part of the composition. Then what will happen? He will not take compensation cess from us. How should I explain? That won't happen, won't make difference. Listen carefully here. A small trader who comes under composition scheme, from whom did he buy goods like cigarettes and others? Maybe from big merchant. GST compensation cess is already taken from him. He has already paid taxes to the government on cigarettes that he has with him. 1%. The government is now taking out its own share on top of that on the sale. This is extra that government has taken. GST compensation cess, small traders who buy goods from big merchants. That is all included, the compensation cess and all. People with composition doesn't claim any input tax credit. No input tax credit is claimed. So whatever tax is paid, there is no claim being made. Entire tax has gone to the government. They received it from purchase. Hence, I would like to clarify that when you buy from small vendor, don't think you will get it for free and won't have to pay compensation cess. Okay? Compensation cess has already included in goods. And now the small trader who is taking money from you, he is taking it all together. He is simply saying item is worth 300 rupees. Everything included in 300. Because the person he bought it from already paid all the tax. Right? Input tax credit on inward supplies liable to cess can be utilized only for payment of cess on outward supplies. Liable to cess under the Act, okay? I explained that input tax credit is available, input tax rate is reduced from output. Therefore, the cess on the output supply is deducted from the input cess. Entire GST won't reduce from anywhere. Okay. Next class, we'll discuss administration of GST and set of concepts in detail. So, for today, I'll just tell you this, that this output cess will be deducted from the input cess. Okay? It means that GST compensation cess that you collected on sales. So what can you deduct from it? GST compensation cess you paid on purchase. You will deduct GST compensation cess from GST compensation cess. Right guys? This was all about GST compensation cess. I think that this was the small law that I presented to you completely. I hope this is clear. We will end today's class here.